Good evening, everyone. Apologies for my tardiness. I was busy in another session. I'm just going to give another few minutes for students that were also part of that session to join this one. Let's say another 2 to 3 minutes. In the meantime, if I can ask you guys a big favor, please post your student number in the chat section. That is our way of doing attendance at this point. So just please remember to post your student number. Hey, good evening, everyone. I think we can start. We do not have that much time. Just a quick discussion. I've noted that you guys are writing your exam as per the final examination table that was distributed by UNISA, or I assume as final as it can get, under these unpredictable circumstances that we find ourselves in 2020, that the exam will be written on the 4th of November. I don't want you to stress too much if you don't have too many contact sessions at this point. We will assist closer to the time. We will increase the contact sessions and do more work groups on the subject. So especially those 3 days before the exam, we're going to have I have a lot of exposure to questions. I am in communication with the UNISA lecturers to provide additional solutions. I won't. It's not my prerogative to supply you with the solution. It is more to guide you and to make sure that you develop the necessary skill to, when you get to that exam and you sit in front of that question, to immediately attempt it with an open mind, because that's what you have to do in this module. Is you have to think outside the box. I know that is a very cliche thing to say, especially at this stage, but unfortunately it is true for AUE3702. You've studied all your various auditing principles, and it is not one of those subjects where you can clearly apply it. You can read a question and you can know all the theory that you need to know about auditing and still fail that question. So that is what's making auditing quite unique. So when we do a question tonight, it's not to just give you the answers. It's in guiding you how to think. It's in guiding you how to approach the question. That is more, for me, the focus point of the session. I see a few more students has joined us. Please make sure that you've posted your student number in the chat section. That's our only form of attendance at this point. Let's quickly go through the Pre-meeting notes. As you guys know, most of you do know, there's a voluntary WhatsApp group that's hosted by myself. Please send your module code and your name to that WhatsApp number, and I'll add you to the group. One-on-one consultations are available for students registered within the Western Cape province. So if you are one of the students in the Western Cape province, you can log a query through a UNISA platform. You can WhatsApp me and I'll provide you the link. You log a query, and on a daily basis, I go to that website or that platform, and I can see who has logged a query for what specific matter, and then I contact you and we can arrange a one-on-one session. Then I've already spoken about the attendance register point 11. At the end of the session, there will be a session evaluation form. If you can please complete that, we will really appreciate it. Then I'm quickly going to unshare, and oh no, I don't have to unshare. I'm just going to put up the question that we are going to be doing. It will be question 3, the bank reconciliation question. Before we discuss this question, because that's what I want this session to be, you have enough time to actually do questions. For me, this is a discussion on how to approach a question. What are the key words that you need to use to make sure that your answer are as correct as possible, because you know your answer and a standard memorandum might not always look the same, but if you use the standard terminology and the standard key words, your answer is more likely to attract that attention, and it actually allows you to think if you use those accurate verbs. We've done a session where we've listed those verbs, those words or those action words that you really need to use, and we've listed them, and we've actually seen how they can be applied. So we will be going through this question. Any questions before we start? Are there any questions burning on your mind that you would like to get out before we start? Okay. My recommendation for starting an auditing question is to always go to the required part first. I do not recommend reading the information first, because it's a scenario that I'm going to sketch to you. So you go to the required part first. You read the required, because that will immediately put you in the correct or right state of mind to absorb the information that's going to be given. Because if you go through the information already, your mind starts anticipating what the required might be, and it places emphasis on probably incorrect facts and incorrect statements. Whereas if you read the required, your mind immediately zones in automatically on the points that it needs to zone in when you go through the information. So in this question, you are required to describe the audit procedures you would conduct on the audit on the bank reconciliation of Beach Break, something I think we all need. Reconciliation of Beach Break Pty Limited at 28 February 2017. Let's quickly go through the information. So, what audit procedures? Remember, we have various assertions that we want to ensure that are substantiated when you do substantive testing. So when you read information, your mind must immediately be geared into how can I do, or how can I verify information that is given, because you are at the client, and the client supplies you with the bank reconciliation. You've already done your test of controls. Your test of controls most likely your test of controls most likely included obtaining the bank reconciliations that you've sampled, ensuring that they signed by the preparer, signed by the reviewer, and signed by an independent third party, which is normally your CFO in the monthly financial packs. But if you haven't seen that in practice, it becomes something that you must remember, and not something that is just by second nature. So that's why how I urge you, if you do questions, make sure that you see the reality of it. These things that they sketch in these questions actually happen the way they describe it. So see the reality in it, then you don't have to remember things. And always remember those key verbs, those key words that we always use. I will put them up on the screen a bit later. I'm referring to words such as inspect, observe, reperform, inquire, all those words. That's what I'm focusing on. Okay. You're in charge of the audit of cash and bank at Beach Break Pty Limited for the financial year end February 2017. During the interim audit conducted during late December 2016, you had audited the bank reconciliation at 31 November and found it to be correct. All payments to trade creditors and all other payments over 20,000 made by Beach Break Pty Limited are carried out by electronic funds transfer. Amounts of 20,000 or less are paid by check. During March, as part of your normal year-end procedures, you are preparing the audit. You are preparing to audit the bank reconciliation prepared by Otis Redding and presented below. So here you have the bank reconciliation. We have the balance as per the cash book, all outstanding checks. In other words, checks that has not yet been tendered for payment. In other words, the holders of these checks did not yet go to the bank and ask for their money. Then we had add direct EFT deposit, so deposits that was made directly into the bank account that we weren't aware of. The accountant weren't aware of that payment, that someone will make that payment. So we saw it in the bank statement and then allocated to the cash receipts journal. And then less bank charges and fees for February 2017. So those are normally any other expenses that didn't go through your normal cash payments journal. Balance as per the bank statement, 28 February 2017. Okay, so this, note 1, this represents an electronic funds transfer credited in error by the bank. So who made the error? The bank. To Beach Break Pty Limited's account on the 27th of February. So there's a note, so that shouldn't have happened in the first place. So it represents an electronic funds transfer credited in error by the bank. So if we say credited in error by the bank, what does that mean? If we have a debit balance in our books, we will have a credit balance in the bank's books because it's our money. It doesn't belong to the bank, and anything that doesn't belong to the bank is a liability to the bank. Does that make sense? Any questions on that statement I just made? So if we have a debit balance, we will have a credit balance at the bank. Okay, so now they ask us to describe the audit procedures. So we need to substantiate the information given here. What are the keywords that we need to use? And guys, I would like it if this can be a participatory session. So if we say cash and bank, and we say that all payments to trade creditors and all other payments over 20,000 made by Beach Break are carried out by electronic funds transfer, what would be one of the first audit procedures that I execute? Wouldn't you obtain the checkbook of the company and ensure that all amounts in the checkbook are less than 20,000? Any questions? Judy?
No, I don't have a question. I'm listening.
Okay, 100%. So that will be one of the first audit procedures that I would have a look at. Obtain, and use those words. Obtain the checkbook and inspect the payments made. So that's one thing that you can use. Balance as per the cash book. You will obtain the cash book and inspect the balance to make sure that it gets to 127,261.30. What else would you guys do before we move on? Is there any other procedure that you would execute at that stage?
Before going down to the actual transactions or what?
Yes. Before we have a look at that, at the lower section, anything above balance as per cash book? Okay, let's do this. I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes to read through the information and then we can discuss the audit procedures.
Okay. Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, guys, let's quickly have a look. If you look at your bank reconciliation, we need to substantiate the amounts on the bank statement, on this bank reconciliation. So we obviously obtained this information from certain sources. So we need to ensure that this bank reconciliation in the first place is complete. Also, we need to substantiate the validity of the amounts for existence. So if we look at, say, for instance, the bank balance as per the bank statement, we will obtain the bank balance, the bank statement ourselves, and verify that amount. Another audit evidence that you can obtain is you can examine the bank confirmation letters. So when, as part of your cash and bank audit procedures, one of the steps would be to obtain from the bank confirmation letters. Those letters will indicate the number of bank accounts a company has, and that will make sure that there's a bank reconciliation performed for each one of those. So if you look at that bank statement, two things can be said about it. You can either obtain the statements directly. Remember, that's one of the key elements to obtaining audit evidence, is how you obtain it. If you obtain it yourself, it's better than the client giving it to you. And if it's third party, it's better than internal. So always remember to establish the hierarchy of audit evidence from most important, most objective and reliable to least. So there specifically, two things could have been said. You can either obtain the bank statements yourself, or you can use the bank confirmation letters that you probably would have collected when you did bank and cash, since bank reconciliation is part of your bank and cash statements. Then you will obtain and you will review the cash books. You can say the cash book or your cash receipts journal or cash payments journal for the existence of those checks, and trace them through to the counterfoil of your checkbook. Because remember, one of the main things in a bank reconciliation is establishing the validity and accuracy of your reconciling items. Because the whole purpose of a bank reconciliation is to ensure that the whole process of a bank reconciliation is an internal control. It's an internal control implemented by management to ensure effective control, that effective and adequate control exists over cash and bank, so that we can reconcile that which we have in the cash that we have in theory, in other words, based on our accounting system, versus what is actually in the bank. So we need to establish the existence of those items. And we can trace them through to the cash book firstly, and then to the check counterfoil. Anything else that you guys can mention there? I don't want to just give answers, or I would like you guys to participate. I know it's late and we all had a busy day, so let's hear some opinions.
Okay, so one of the things that I would do to test completeness is to actually look at the bank statement, see how many transactions were there in that bank account, and ensure that or ascertain that all those items have been reconciled for. So there's no item that is not part of the reconciliation that is part of the bank statement. So that would address completeness assertion.
100%. With that comment, I would like to add something you made me also think about. See, that's what's nice about participation. If you execute audit procedures, remember you always need to consider the cost versus benefit. In other words, how relevant and how reasonable are your audit procedures. If you want to reperform, remember reperform also one of the key words. If you want to reperform a bank reconciliation, it needs to depend on the size of the firm. So if you reperform a bank reconciliation, Yes, for some companies and smaller clients, you can do that. For some others, it is literally impossible. That's why we need software to do that for us. If you think about a big company like a group like the Woolworths group, imagine what their bank statement looks like. It is thousands of pages. So always make sure that you give the audit procedures that it fits your client. Because if that specific audit procedure doesn't work, then Kaya, you still need to test for completeness. So that's not what I'm saying. But your audit procedure must be adjusted, and you most likely will be using computer-assisted techniques to evaluate or to obtain the bank statement, and then use those CATs to filter out amounts on that bank statement. So definitely completeness. Perfect. Good.
Absolutely. It goes back to what you were saying. If you get the bank statement directly from the client, you can take it if they give you an Excel document because it's directly from the client. In that sense, it's easy for you to just do the totals, and then you get your total items on that bank statement, and you just sum the total items on your bank rec, and then you can see that there's actually 15 on this side, there's 15 on this side. It doesn't need you to actually count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can just do that in the Excel document. That will give you those total numbers.
Definitely perfect, Kaya. Good. I see your hand is up.
I just have maybe it's a stupid question.
No stupid questions.
Assumed knowledge. The balance of the cash book, Charles, is that also then the balance of cash in bank on your statement of financial position?
Definitely.
Okay, that's my question.
If it's not a value on the face of your statement of financial position or a specific line item in your sub-note of cash and cash equivalents, it must be in one of the calculations. If this was the only cash book of this client, then I would suspect that should also be the main item in your cash and cash equivalents note to the statement of financial position.
Cool. Then I just have a audit procedure related to the existence assertion regarding the direct EFT deposit made in error to our account, or stated that was made in error. Again, obtain the bank statement for the 17th of February 2017 and inspect the bank statement for that amount.
100%. Thanks, Kurt. Definitely. What is another audit procedure that we can execute or execute if we want to test for completeness? It's an assertion on account transaction level cutoff. A bank reconciliation is a reconciliation done from a specific date to a specific date. In other words, we need to ensure that all amounts that were part of this reconciliation process were supposed to be part of this reconciliation process, because if they weren't supposed to be part, it would have given rise to invalid reconciling items.
So what you are saying, Charles, we need to confirm that balance as per cash book. What was the final date transaction posted in that cash book?
Exactly, and we should question any subsequent postings done to that cash book. In other words, if any corrections were made, which I suspect there should have been if we've done a reconciliation process, because remember, a reconciliation, this reconciliation that we see is just the face of the reconciliation. There's still a back end that's taking place behind the scenes, where we are reconciling our cash receipts journal and our cash payments journal, which is ultimately our cash book, for any amounts that were correctly on our bank statement but did not reflect in our cash book. So we would have updated our cash book balance, meaning that cash book balance that they give there as the opening balance would have already been the reconciliation adjusted cash book balance.
I hear you.
So your bank statement that you received from the bank, it will be as a cutoff because it will show all your movements that has gone through for that time period.
Definitely.
So you can use that as a cutoff procedure for asking the bank from that date to the current time. So that will show your movement on the account.
100%. So what we usually do in practice, and that differs from audit firm to audit firm, you would normally select. So you will obtain that bank statement because that's third party, and you can place more reliance in terms of the cut-off transaction. So you will take the first transaction for that specific period under review, and you will go to your cash book, and you will select the last 5 entries of the previous period and ensure that they should not have been in the current period, and that they should have been in that period. So that's a way of how you do cutoff. So you obtain the balance from the bank, and you see that purchases were made at Spa on the 1st of August. That was the very first transaction for coffee and tea for the office. So I would suspect, in theory, that the first entry in my accounting records for August, I did say August, yeah, let's say August. My first accounting entry for August should have been the coffee and tea that I purchased. It doesn't work like that in reality, though. So I need to make sure that all amounts, or that at least you can, let's say the five, because you can't check everything. So some auditing firms take the last 5 entries of July. They will take the last 5 entries in the cash book for July and test them to the bank statements, the cash transactions, and make sure that they shouldn't have been included in the August statement as opposed to the July statement.
Yeah, just a general comment as well. So sometimes you might ask the bank to give you a statement as at a specific date, and they are unable to do that. It depends. Like sometimes they give you for 2 months, or for as at that date when you ask. Let's say you're asking for a statement for the end of November, but you're in December, and they say we can't run a statement for the 30th of November, but we can give you the statement as of today. So you still need to go and inspect that statement to ensure that it doesn't include the transactions for December, but it only includes the it will include transactions for December, but you need to only take into considerations the ones that have dates up until to the end of November, because you're looking at November only.
100%. Okay, so to put this in a bit more perspective, and to highlight it into a process of what you will do. So basically, you will gather your bank statement, your general ledger, and your bank reconciliation documents for this specific month of February. So that will be your first point, because you need to start somewhere. So you'll gather those documents, your bank statements, your general ledger, and this bank reconciliation document. You'll start with that. And then you will compare or check that final figures on your reconciliation document against the bank statement and the cash book. Moving on to a third point. You will
Sorry, so
yes.
For example, the bank charges for February, you will see that appears on the bank statement and in the cash book for February 2017.
Just
You
repeat that,
understand
Ria.
what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. The bank charges and fees for February 2017. You check that appears in the cash book for the month of Feb, as well as on the bank statement for Feb.
Correct.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
100%. It should definitely reflect on both. Secondly, you will obtain, or not secondly, thirdly, also obtain, as we've already mentioned, the checkbook from the client and trace those checks that we list there as reconciling items to the cash book and then to the check counterfoil, the relevant checkbook counterfoil.
I just want to understand that specific section there, Charles.
Yes,
So
good.
those checks were noted in the cash book as payments
Yeah,
made, but they're not reflecting on the bank statement because they've not been cashed yet by whoever the payment was made to.
correct. So if you gave me a check in March, it will reflect in your March accounting records as a payment. But I still have, I think the last time I checked, 6 months to walk around with that check before I pay it. So that check has got the there's the possibility of that check staying on your bank reconciliation for 6 months.
I hear you. Thanks.
100%. Another audit procedure, staying with the checks, is that you will inspect the checkbook to see if there are any old or stale checks that have not been recorded in the reconciliation process. In other words, checks that were issued more than 6 months ago. Ensure by inspecting the cash book that they were accurately reversed in the opposite journal.
Okay, sorry, just a question. Can you mention those? Can you say like mention those stale checks, even though they don't give mention to it in the question? Are you still able to list it as a procedure?
You can definitely list it because you
Can
obtain
you?
the you obtain the checkbook, and then you can obviously list audit procedures that you would execute on that checkbook to make sure that the
Okay.
amounts that outstanding check section is complete.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
100%. So it's more of a completeness check.
Good evening, sir.
How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Can't complain.
I just wanted to ask, will I be correct in saying that you can also inspect the amounts on the checks paid and compare with the creditors' balances in the general ledger or in the creditors' ledger?
Just repeat that, Ellen.
Is it correct to say that you can also inspect the amounts on the checks paid and the creditors' balances on each particular date there in the creditors' ledger?
You can definitely do that as well.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, Charles. I think we just need to note if we're using the correct audit verbs. So I think we are using inspect all the time, but when you are taking the balances by the cash book and agreeing it to the balance as per the reconciliation, that is not inspection. That is another audit procedure that you're using. So we need to be careful to say what we're doing, because we're not inspecting when we're doing that. We're applying another procedure.
100%, Kaya. Remember, the verbs that you can use is observe, inspect, recalculate, inquiries to management, analytical procedures. Another audit procedure that you can execute is you will obtain the previous bank reconciliation and ensure that all reconciling items on that bank reconciliation has been cleared, because if they haven't been cleared, they should be reflecting on this bank reconciliation again. So that's another audit procedure.
And also, if they haven't cleared from the previous one and they still appear on this one, then there should be communication evidence to prove that there has been follow-up and investigation for those ones. They're not just sitting on those reconciliations all the time, but something is being done about them.
100%, and that gets me to your point of earlier of using the correct verbs. The next point is inquire from management. You will have a discussion with management and obtain management representation on any problems that they are aware of. So regarding the bank reconciliation process.
Charles, sorry. So this question was only out of for 18 marks, right?
Yes.
But now we have so many procedures that we're just focusing on checks. But then are we allowed to do that? Like we've covered at least like 7 so far.
You can. There's no specific point that says you can't just focus on one area. No, it all reflects on a combined total. So even if there's 7, remember the memo is never just 18 marks for an auditing paper, and the memo is never just 18 marks. It's more than 18 because there are much more audit procedures that can be applied than 18. So a memorandum will always provide for that. Okay. Any other questions that you guys might have on this specific one? Guys, bank reconciliation is a very topical question. Make sure that you understand what the bank reconciliation process in order to ensure that you can audit it. And remember, there's a fine line between what internal controls are in place and the auditing of those internal controls. Okay, so another audit procedure would have been to evaluate the approval process of this bank reconciliation. Who approved it? Who performed it? Who approved it? There must be at least 2 approvers because we are testing for segregation of duties.
Wouldn't that be testing internal controls then?
See, that's what I just said. There's a very fine line testing the internal controls and substantive procedures. Testing the internal controls is you're only selecting a sample. Now we are looking at this bank reconciliation and we must still make sure that we substantiate who signed it. Who signed those signatures? One of the audit procedures will be to obtain the approved signature list from the client and compare the signatures to the bank reconciliation process. Bank reconciliation.
This is so sorry.
Sorry, no, you can go ahead.
It's just that because in practice, nobody, like in my company, nobody signs the bank recons at all. So it's just for me to flip my mind to the way that the marker is reading my answer and to the way we actually practice. It's going to be so hard in the exam for me to do that.
Judy, to be honest with you, I think that is more an anomaly almost. Bank reconciliations that I've audited, there must actually be proof that it was reviewed. It's an issue that's still raised by external auditors. I know one company that I've been part of the audit team. The client actually has got the signatures of the reviewers saved on PDF, so that when they receive the bank reconciliation electronically, because a lot of things are being done electronically, they can add their signature and then what you call it, flatten the PDF document so that signature cannot be removed.
Oh, that's really strange, because even with the checks, like it's so strange for me in these questions to deal with the checks because I haven't used checkbooks in 8 years. So now for me to
that I agree with. No, that they I definitely agree with. But you see, we still need to deal with these questions. For me, for me, a more topical approach would have been to use, for instance, the debit or credit card process, because we don't give people checkbooks anymore. We issue them debit cards or credit cards, and that affects the bank reconciliation process that the bookkeepers and the accountants need to deal with.
Definitely.
100%. Kaya, you had another question?
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you as well. I think that needs to start, the curriculum needs to start from the Department of Basic Education before it can go to us, because the problem is still there. But what I wanted to say is the sign of the evidence of the control being performed in the review doesn't necessarily have to be on the face of the reconciliation. It can be on a checklist. So where one of my previous employers, we had a checklist which was separate from the bank rec, because the bank rec was done on an Excel document and it was saved in a folder. We didn't print it out and sign it manually. So, but we had hard copy checklist. There's a line item for each of the procedures that we do for the bank rec. So you say you obtain the bank statement, you downloaded it from the bank portal or whatever you did. So you tick next to that, or you put your initials next to that. So I've done that. If you sign it off at the end, there's actually sign off at the end to acknowledge that you've done all of those checks. So the evidence of the control being performed doesn't necessarily have to sit on the actual rec, but there must be something that proves that you've done all those checks and someone is signed off and someone is reviewed.
I agree 100% with that. I've also observed where on a monthly basis there's a management pack that goes to the CFO, and the various preparers and reviewers have signed a checklist in the front of that pack before it makes its way to the CFO. So that can also work, definitely. Okay, guys, I think we've listed. Yes.
Sorry, Charles, I just had a question. I wasn't really clear on whether we're testing a test of control here or it's a substantive procedure, because you were saying we need to look at the signatures. Are we just checking that the segregation of duties, or we want to ensure that there has been sign off? Because for me, if you're looking for sign off, I think we're looking at an internal control to say every reconciliation is signed off as every.
No, I'm specifically referring to the one that we are testing, and the main objective is to ensure segregation of duties.
Okay, thanks.
100%, Kaya. Guys, we've listed in this recording more than actually the answers provided. So I think it was a very good discussion. There's not enough time to do the next question. So if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to ask those questions. Like I said in the beginning, we are going to be doing more sessions where we actually do the question together. For now, I want to make sure that you are thinking about these questions in the right way and applying your mind, because that is the skill that you need to master. Yes, good.
On the topic that Kaya raised now, Charles, in terms of the segregation of duties, which assertion are we trying to substantiate with obtaining evidence that the bank reconciliation was signed and approved by two different individuals or staff members?
Now you're asking me putting me on the spot there, Kurt.
Because I'm also trying to make the separation or distinguish between testing the control in terms of the bank recon process and testing bank reconciliation substantively to make sure that everything included on this bank reconciliation is complete, accurate, and all of those other nice things.
If we look at the classes of transaction level, which I think bank reconciliation fall more under, we've already addressed the completeness aspect. We've already discussed cutoff. We touched on presentation and disclosure. So for me, segregation of duty will fall more under accuracy, because if segregation didn't take place, we cannot safely say that bank reconciliation was performed accurately, because it could have been misconstrued.
Okay, 100%. Thanks.
If I have to apply on that,
The thing is, it can become very dangerous to list a test of control as a substantive procedure in answering these questions.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not the case. So that's why I said in the beginning, it's a very fine line between testing controls and substantive procedures. Fall into the trap of listing an internal control test versus a substantive test. And that's why I said a substantive test will be you looking at something and obtaining evidence that it is what it says it is. So if we inspect for the signatures, it's not just that they sign. We will obtain the approved signatory list. And I think even the company that I work for at the moment, they have an approved signatory list that we can obtain and verify that the signature that we are reviewing, or the reconciliation that we are reviewing, was in fact signed by the person who was supposed to sign it. So the internal control is that it must have been signed by 3 different people. We are now substantiating that we are looking at the latest signatories that we obtained from the company. So there's a very fine line.
Okay,
You see, for me, Charles, I've always taken that as an internal control. To address the accuracy assertion, I've always thought you have to recalculate something to prove that it's accurate. I've always taken segregation of duties and signatures that is an internal control, because if a company says once a case strike has been prepared, the sign off, in another company, that internal control will say if a case strike is prepared, there will be a tick or there will be initials. So that is a unique internal control based on that organization. So I've always taken it as if it's that, not as if it's addressing a substantive assertion. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're 100% Kai. That's why that's why I said a very fine line, and you can easily fall into that trap. But segregations of duties specifically is something that can both be an audit procedure and an internal control.
Kaya,
Okay.
I think what Charles is essentially saying is that if we list that audit procedure to test for the segregation of duties, it's not going to hurt us in the exam. There will be a chance that we get the mark, or there will be a chance that we don't get the mark. So go for it, man.
Definitely, let's be optimistic. We will get the mark.
Yes, yes, we will.
Definitely, yeah. But yeah, guys, if there's no other questions, you are welcome to attempt the other question that I've sent, and send it to me over WhatsApp, and I'll have a look at it. I can't promise a prompt response, but I will definitely have a look at it.
Charles, where did you send the question? Sorry, I don't get these things. Where do you send it to?
Send on the AUE group.
No, I did send my name, but they never added me.
Just send me another
too.
WhatsApp.
Can you just give me the number? Is it the 063 number?
Yeah, because I have you on my, that's very strange. I do have you on my, I recognized your name immediately.
Yeah,
So
I sent a message for it, but I wasn't added to the group yet.
And me too, Sam.
Yeah, Judy, I have you. You are at the right at the top. Okay, apologies for that, because literally as we sit here, just after my first class, I've got 43 WhatsApps that I have to go through. So the chances that one person might slip through the cracks in terms of being added to a group or not,
yeah, no problem.
It's quite high.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I'll just wait.
If you see me not do it, just send me another WhatsApp, and that will serve as a reminder for me to add you.
No problem.
Should
Thanks,
I also resend mine?
If you're not on the group, just send me a reminder, please.
All right. Thank you, Sam.
Okay. Thanks, Charles.
Charles, you need better segregation of duties on your WhatsApps.
Yeah, exactly. So you see what's the problem. So the accuracy of my allocation has been compromised.
There's a lot of reconciling items that you are missing there.
Okay, Kurt, I think you must go now. No, just joking. No, there are. I really, there's over 200 students with the module, so it's quite it's hectic, but we try to assist wherever we can.
Yes, sir. You'll get full marks for this.
Thanks, guys. Guys, please remember to post this as a closing statement. Please remember to post your student number. It's part of our attendance register. And if you can please do the session evaluation form. That's also in. If it's not posted tonight, you will find it in the chat. If you just keep on scrolling up, it is there. If you can just please complete that evaluation form as well, I would highly appreciate it. And then that's it for me. You guys must have a lovely evening. If there's no other questions, then I will see you guys on the WhatsApp group.
Cheers, man. Thanks so much.
100%, guys. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, sir. Bye.
Bye-bye.